Listen, sometimes you gotta appreciate the classics. As I do. Yes, I could be playing the hit new video games coming out, but why would I if I can exploit your... Whilst dodging tax collectors left and right, I was listening back to some of my earlier videos. Oh, I love Capcom. They make some of my favorite games of all time. In the time since then, my love for Capcom hasn't changed. Every time they add a download code to their physical games, I want to strangle the life out of them, but the games themselves are where it's at. And although I haven't played more of the Breath of Fire series, I did play a lot of Monster Hunter, Devil May Cry, and some of the fighting game collections. And of course, the two greatest franchises of all time. Man, where did all this inspiration come from? All these juggernauts in the gaming scene. How did this titan get born into the world? Let's go all the way back and find out. Vulgus, the very first Capcom game ever made. A typical space shooter from the 80s, you move around shooting enemies whilst avoiding contact with them. The standout features of this game are the camera moving left and right with the player, and the use of bombs that can go through smaller enemies and instantly destroy the bigger ones. Yes, having a secondary weapon back in the day was a worthy feature. I know some of the older ones already had that, like Regulus by Sega had bombs, but alternate weapons wasn't the standard for shoot 'em ups back then. I suppose there's Sinistar, but we didn't talk about him. In Vulgus, you can get more bombs by collecting these POW item drops, so tactical use of your bombs in tricky situations is part of the design. In the manual it even says to consider enemy positions carefully. Oh no, look at that, the Yoshichi. This is a recurring symbol in a lot of Capcom games, usually as some kind of power up. It's even the loading screen when you boot up the Capcom Arcade Stadium. Here it's an enemy though. Visually it's honestly pretty impressive for 1984 standards. There's 4 standout backgrounds and a variety of colorful enemies to fight that are visually very distinct from each other. It's honestly kind of amazing that this was their first effort in the video game scene. So it's not surprising when I tell you that, I don't like this one. Most of this has to do with the camera and enemy patterns. I don't exactly hate a camera moving with me in a shoot 'em up, but here they spam so many enemies at you that it becomes nauseating looking at it for too long. Consider enemy positions carefully. Yeah, I would if there weren't 4 of them on the screen at the same time. I suppose they really want you to use those bombs. There's also these 3 items you occasionally see, S, D and E tokens. According to the manual, these increase the speed, attack power and the amount of enemies when they spawn into the game, and collecting them resets these values to normal. As opposed to the game facts guide saying that the act of collecting them increases these enemy values. I'd be inclined to believe the game's explanation over some dude's walkthrough, but I gotta be honest, I don't even notice that much of an increase when they show up on the screen. Unless the game actively told me so, I would not have noticed these to have any effect on the game at all. Also, why even add a collectible in a shoot 'em up that you have to collect to get the game to be normal again? There's enemies oozing out of every crevice on the screen and they get a power up without even having to collect it. That's as if the mushroom in Mario made enemies more aggressive when it's on the screen, but when you collect it they chill out back to normal. Also, I get that music during your game was a luxury and everything in this time period, but this game's music... This makes me itch. I found a version of this track with the melody and the drums separated, and it is so much easier on the ears. I have no idea why combining these makes it so ear graining to me. I wish I could tell you. Oh, a big space rock. Oh, this is really far into the game to be introducing new enemy sprites. Well, it's dead. What the hell was that? Apparently that was Vulgus. The final boss of the game. No. Come on. I can't just leave it at that. I haven't made a video in God knows how long. Winter is right around the corner. I will enter Yoshi hibernation again. Do you know how long that'll last? Okay, what do we have here? Pirate ship Higemaru. No, I'm not doing that one. I'm not doing that. 1942. The second shoot 'em up made by Capcom. Whereas most of you probably never heard of Vulgus, some of you might have heard of this game. It's been ported to nearly every device known to man. You know, I was planning on sticking to the arcade versions of each game, but the good old NES usually did ports of arcade games at this time pretty well. I wonder how this one holds up. Arcade version it is. The game setting is the Pacific Theater of World War II. You're a P-38 fighter flying for the United States with the aim to destroy the Japanese air fleet. Wow. The whole fleet. Just me. My god. This one pilot single-handedly stopped World War II by himself. Also, I get that this game was made with the Western markets in mind, but I do find it funny that their idea was, yeah, you know what the Americans love? Blowing up the Japanese. Yeah, let's make a game based on that. The funny thing is 1942 does have an end state. The game has 32 levels, and once you reach the end of level 32, we give up. Yeah? You know what? If my country's air force got decimated by a single fighter, I would too. I looked it up, by the way. In 1942, the Japanese Army Air Force apparently had around 1,500 combat aircraft. And at the rate you were dispatching them in the game, yeah, wow, you really are just destroying the entire Japanese Air Force. Anyway, let's actually talk about the gameplay and the presentation for a moment. Unlike that version of the game, the sound design in 1942 only uses what comes off as drums. So unlike Vulgus, I actually like listening to this. It's just background noise, but it's enough to keep me engaged. You have a variety of enemy planes, each with their own AI behavior. There's never more than 2 types of enemies on the screen at the same time, and the pace is slow enough that you can react accordingly. And if it gets really crowded, you do have a dodge maneuver that gives you some breathing room. The Yashichi makes a return here, this time as a collectible to increase your score. The POW icon also makes a return here, in a variety of colors, each color acting as a different power-up. I wish they had made them more visually distinct than just changing the color of the POW symbol. It doesn't really communicate what the symbol is supposed to do. I do love 2 of these though, the one that doubles your shots and the other one that summons 2 wingmen for support fire. I like that as the levels progress, you do get a change in scenery. The city backgrounds don't start until very late into the game. I think my biggest issue is the fact that there's just 32 levels at all. It's not like an old arcade game where you need to play until you reach the kill screen. There is an actual ending, it's just getting there takes an hour and a half. And where the game works in its simplicity and restraint of spamming enemies, it does get a bit samey. Unlike later arcade titles with varied levels and bosses, this really is just do the same thing 32 times with the occasional boss. Oh look at that, World War II is over. But just playing the game holds up tremendously well. I can understand why this game caught on. The basic idea of popping in a quarter and seeing how far you'd be able to get. It's satisfying enough for a couple of rounds with a couple of quarters when you're hanging out at the arcade, but not satisfying enough to fully finish. The gameplay loop of 1942 works so well because the initial experience is so satisfying to play. So it comes as no shock that they expanded on this concept with all kinds of sequels. You think we're rehashing a lot of ideas in the game industry now? Back then, that was the norm. Oh, you want Mega Man on the NES? Sure, we have 6 of them and they all play the same. Up next, 1943, Battle for Midway, based on the historical battle that took place in 1942. Capcom, just an idea here, but could you have called it anything else? 1943, Battle of the Bismarck Sea? Just saying. Took me less than a minute to figure that one out. Okay, what do we have here? 16 levels of air and sea combat, usually ending with a big ship or plane. More variety in the weapons, like spread guns, laser shells and shotguns. These are on a timer though, which would suck if it wasn't for the fact that the timer is a full 20 seconds and you will easily find another power up in that time. So in essence the only real annoyance is the fact that you can't stay with the same weapon the whole time. Or who knows, if you shoot the POW icon, it changes into a variety of different things. So if you're good at timing your shots, you might be able to find the power up that extends your current weapon. The dodge returns and there's a life bar so the game allows you to take several hits instead of just dying after one hit. However, the coolest thing I think they added was the screen-wide attacks. These take a chunk of your health, but essentially destroy everything on screen, and what they do is based on the current state of the level. I prefer the tsunami the most as it pauses the screen but doesn't hamper your ability to shoot. So while the screen is paused, you can shoot down the bigger foes that wouldn't die immediately from the tsunami. And that's just a random cow. Alright, then I guess we're blowing up the naval dairy farm. No milk for the Japanese today. The music is also a lot cleaner. The game came out in 1987 after all, and the advancements in audio design were plentiful at this point. There's multiple stage and boss themes, and they're all decent. Is it just me or does this ooze the Sega Genesis? Oh well, at least the NES version doesn't kill me anymore. And it also sounds extremely similar to Mega Man. And that's the end of that. Ah yes, my reward for finishing the game. Misinformation. Now, you might think we're done, but 1943 actually got the Dragon Ball treatment, resulting in 1943 Kai. Kai apparently meaning modified or altered. You learn something new every day. This version has edited enemy sprites and backgrounds, way more aggressive enemy AI, a reduction of stages from 16 to 10, but most surprisingly, the entire soundtrack is different. Like, the whole thing. It still sounds very much like the Sega Genesis, but that's a pretty big change for a random updated version of the game. I suppose if you really like 1943 and want to play a shorter, more difficult version of it, this is the game for you. Alright, 1941 Counterattack, released in 1990. This is where the series starts feeling more like a stereotypical shoot 'em up. You have 6 varied stages, all with a boss fight at the end. Supposedly, this game being a prequel and all takes place on the Western Front in the North Atlantic Ocean, but I'd really struggle to make out those details. I suppose these buildings do look very European, but it's not like we're gonna be blowing up Berlin. Some small tweaks like hit points being expressed in units instead of a life bar. Some weapons like the shotgun have been omitted, but instead we have the addition of a charge shot that's different depending on the weapon you currently have equipped. You can roll if you hit the wall. First game to even really have walls that aren't enemy obstacles. Doing this makes it impossible to aim, but it's kinda neat, I guess. It's honestly kind of a bizarre game to play, because I can see how similar this game is to 1943, yet not at all at the same time. There's a clear evolution where 1942 felt like the same level looping over and over, 1943 changing up the combat and adding a variety of looping levels, to 1941 and just having dedicated levels with bosses, whilst refining the combat system of 1943. I'm just surprised there's been 3 years between each game, if the jump forward isn't that massive. UN Squadron came out the year before and also developed by Capcom, but feels completely fresh. I suppose it's also the question, how much does a game need to do to feel like a proper sequel? And this was an era of decline for arcades. They didn't get revitalized till 1991 with Street Fighter 2. All in all, definitely a good game, the best so far. I'm just interested how much these games will change as we go further. And further we went, 19XX. 1996. Jesus. I guess Capcom really had their priorities elsewhere. Who can blame them? Street Fighter was printing money at the time. The game is apparently set in a fictional setting with the aim to stop a terrorist organization from taking over the world. Again, not that the visuals would convey either a real or fictional setting anyway, it's in the realm of video games, so anything goes. This time you have the choice between 3 airplanes, a balanced one that's slower with higher firepower, and one that's faster with lower firepower. They each also have a preference for the machine gun, spread and laser weapons, which also have their own individual charge move. Each plane also has bombs they can charge up to go from a big blast to a screen nuke depending on how long you hold it. And finally, the loop-de-loop dodge roll maneuver has sadly been omitted from the game. But then again, if you're adapted to shoot 'em ups, maybe you didn't use it that much anyway. As for the presentation itself, oh man, this game looks sick. How'd they get the detail to look this good? Oh fuck, tanks are coming in with parachutes. Alright, I see how it is. Holy fuck, what are these bosses? Man, I always thought Metal Slug was the undefeated king of sprite animation in this era, but this is a serious contender. I feel like this might have definitely been underappreciated back in the day. I mean, this came out during the start of the 3D frenzy in gaming, yet here's this arcade game with focus on pixel art. It's also surprisingly calm, the music more so being relaxing than upbeat or heavy in your face rocking tunes. I've read here and there that the more melancholic presentation may have put people off, which, yes, in a blaring arcade-like setting I wouldn't even be able to hear this soundtrack, but I gotta be honest, this stuff is my jam. I've often heard the saying that true gamers don't care about graphics, but this always felt like a wrong take to me. Visuals, game feel, and atmosphere, all of this is essential in creating an experience that'll last with you. You don't have to go for the utmost realism, but it's foolish to think that how sound cues and visuals interact with your inputs has no bearing on the experience. As such, even if mechanically it's not the most standout, the presentation has aged like the finest of wines, and that's such a big part of shoot 'em ups. And the game is great to play as well. It's sad to know that this is basically the last shoot 'em up Capcom ever developed in-house, but for me personally, this was their best work. But who knows, maybe 1944 The Loopmaster might top it. Released in the year 2000 and published by Capcom, the game was being made by developer Rising, currently known as A-Thing. Alright, never heard of them, but let's see what they made. Oh, Bloody Roar, that's cool. A bunch of anime fighting games. Marvel vs. Capcom 3, wow, okay, that's sick. Okay, Monster Hunter Generations and Generations Ultimate, those games are fantastic. Wait, Pikmin 4? What? That's quite a portfolio! Alright, but let's be real. This was the year 2000. They just got started. How did 1944 fare? Okay, I don't have a lot to say about it, but I don't mean that in a bad way. The sprite work is still amazing and the game still feels great to play. Also a lot of short stages. Instead of 6 or 7, we have 15. They all feel like half the length of the stages in the previous games, but each stage does have its own boss fight, which makes the game feel more about the bosses than the levels. The soundtrack is also cool, but a bit more normal with an emphasis on rock and tunes and not the same laid-back jazzy atmosphere that the previous game had. Although I do have to ask, what is with this intermission music? I have absolutely no idea why this was chosen, but I love it. I think the only thing further of note is the ending, or lack of. After mission 15 ends, there are the credits! It's weird, because the game is definitely up there with 1941 and 19XX as one of the better games, but it's also an arcade game released in 2000s, so I can't imagine this being something with a lasting impact as arcades were really dying at this point. Then again, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 was the same year, so... And with that, we reach our last mainline entry of the 1940X series. Yeah, there's a couple phone games, but I have no access to those at this point. 1942, Joint Assault, released in 2008 for the PS3 and Xbox Online stores. Made by a company that honestly seemed all they did was ports, but who knows, the game might be good. The game is an amalgamation of various elements of the 1940X series. It has the health and bomb system from 1943, the charge fire land-based battle sections and rank from 1941, and the fighter lineup and level bonus and level rank system from 19XX. The visuals went for 3D for this one and give off the vibe of toy airplanes and vehicles. There's only 5 stages, so in that regard it feels like a bit of a downgrade. At release the game was criticized as too short and expensive for the product that was delivered. It was $10 on both storefronts, and this being during the indie scene exploding, I understand some pushback against the game that's essentially 30 minutes long and feels like a bit of a regression in the series. However, I'd say with my current day glasses on, $10 for a small game isn't out of the usual anymore. And besides, it's pretty easy to hack your PS3 and that just solves all your financial problems. Well, except rent. I don't think the PS3 can take care of that. But maybe. Because of the game going for a pseudo-toy look, it's honestly held up pretty well. The bosses are fun, and whilst this is the only game that didn't run on quarters, I had no issue playing through it and beat it on my first go-around. Yes, a die-hard shoot-em-up fan will probably not get his fill, but it's a fun and relaxing game. What's the soundtrack like? I tell you if the audio didn't glitch out on me and make everything sound like... In fact, I don't think I'll ever be able to hear audio ever again after this game. Apparently you can fix this by decreasing the sound effects volume by at least 1/3, so there's that. So that's pretty much the 1940X series, and I gotta say, that's pretty fun. If you're at all interested in the franchise, every entry is available through the Capcom Arcade Stadium for about $2 a game. I honestly think that's an excellent way to experience these games. The stadium is on pretty much every platform, and the visual choices for filters, quality of life additions and control setups make this a very comfortable way to play the games. 1942 Joint Strike unfortunately does require a PlayStation 3 or 360, but the chances are you might have one laying around the house, and if not, they're pretty cheap nowadays. I think that the 360 storefront has shut down, but the PlayStation one might still be up, and otherwise, well, you know, there's options. You are a pirate! Will Capcom ever return to this franchise? Will they have big ambitions? Probably not, but hey, they might lend the IP to a different development studio, so who knows what they'll eventually do with it. We live in a world where Okami 2 is apparently happening, so anything's possible. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I hope that... Of course I would spill my drink in the last bit. Jeez.